All right, folks, I screwed up. Back in July, I did a head-to-head test between the Peax Backcountry Duo and the Sofrin D25 LR. I'm gonna drop the link right here for the original video. Now, little bit of context. When Peax first introduced the Backcountry Duo, there's a bit of hubbub on the internet because in form factor, it is basically identical to this Sofrin light. Now the Peax retails for about 90 bucks USD and the Sofrin retails for 18 bucks USD. So there was some controversy that people thought they were the identical light and that there was just a huge markup on the Peax. So I set out to do some testing to try and quantify any of the differences. Now where I screwed up is that I used the stock batteries in each of these headlamps. So the Peax comes with a 3600 milliamp hour battery and the Sofrin comes with a 3000 milliamp hour battery. And when I ran these tests, the Peax came out superior. I then drew the conclusion that the Peax was a superior headlamp. Almost right away, a couple people highlighted in the comments, you should have switched the batteries because obviously, and this is on me for not recognizing this, a 3600 milliamp hour battery is going to outperform a 3000 milliamp hour battery. So it's been on the back of my mind to do this. However, I still thought there would be a couple of issues swapping batteries. So I decided to do something a little bit different and I bought two identical batteries. Now these are 3500 milliamp hour batteries. I got these from the 18650 battery store. I'm going to drop the link below. These cost $4 US each. I think it was an additional 15 bucks in shipping, but to get these to my front door was 25 bucks for the pair. So then what I did is I sat down and I redid all the initial testing. I ran both these through a couple of charge-discharge cycles and then charged them both up fully and then ran through the testing procedure that I ran through in the original video. Now, let me describe that testing procedure. First up, I used a digital lux meter. Now, lux is a measure of a luminance. That is the total number of lumens falling on a given surface. And on this particular meter, is basically maybe a 3/4 inch in diameter sphere right here. And so all the lumens that fall on that sphere get measured and you get an output in a number of lux. The second meter I used was a thermometer, an infrared digital thermometer, because I wanted to be able to keep track of the heat generated by each of the lamps. Now, as far as the testing protocol, I would, in a completely blackened room, take the lux meter, turn it on, put it at a specific marked location on the floor, and then I had a specific location for where to hold the headlamp, and I would measure the luminance generated by each headlamp every single hour and enter that data into a spreadsheet. Then, independently, I would measure a particular spot on the headlamp from a specific distance at the same interval. So at every hour of the testing, I have the amount of luminance generated and I have the amount of heat generated. I then entered all that data onto the spreadsheet and created some graphs that we're going to walk through right now. However, before we get into the results, a couple of updates. Number one, Black Friday deals are everywhere right now, and I kind of felt like I might as well jump on the bandwagon. So from now until December 2nd, all apparel at Forged in the Backcountry is 30% off. So if you go to the website forgedinthebackcountry.com and use the code BF24, you'll get 30% off your entire purchase. And still, all orders over $150 qualify for free shipping. Now, the next Black Friday deal is a pretty big deal. I am offering up to 20% off guided black bear hunts in British Columbia. I recently posted a video that I'll link right here describing the area that I've acquired for guiding spring black bear hunts here in British Columbia. They're any weapon, archery, or rifle, and I'm gonna do up to 20% off of those hunts. Only until December 2nd, and only good for the 2025 season. So if you are interested in that hunt, email me, jay@mindfulhunter.com. And depending on what you're looking for, I'll give you all the details and the discount that would apply for a particular hunt. Third and final update, there is only 3 weeks left to enter the giveaway for the Prime RV X34. So anyone who joins Mindful Reviews between now and December 15th will be automatically entered to win a Prime compound bow. So you just go to mindful-reviews.com, pick a membership plan, join up, you're automatically entered to win the Prime RVX 34. So there you go. 30% off at forgedinthebackcountry.com with the code BF24, up to 20% off guided black bear hunts in British Columbia. Just email me, jay@mindfulhunter.com, and get automatically entered to win a Prime RVX 34. All you got to do is join at mindful-reviews.com between now and December 15th. All right, on to the data. So before we dig into the new data, let's refresh ourselves with what the old data looked like. In total, we had 7 measurements between hour 0 and hour 6th. And remember, this was with the 3600 milliamp hour battery in the Peax and the 3000 milliamp hour battery in the Sofrin. I will also say, I was doing testing on the red lights in both, and there was such a small draw using the red light that even over 3 and 4 hours, I was getting almost no change in the amount of luminance with the red light as the battery drained. So I decided not to continue testing the red light and just focus on the white light, because what we're really interested in is there a greater deal of efficiency in the Peax? Like, have they fundamentally upgraded the components in this lamp somehow, or is it just a replica of this Sofrin that they've increased the price in? So we're only looking at white light. So at hour 0, it is 1900 lux each. And then you can see they kind of start to split apart. Hour 1, the Peax goes to 925, Sofrin to 830. Hour 2, Peax to 890, Sofrin to 750. Hour 3, Peax to 880, Sofrin to 725, and then hour 4, Peax to 603, Sofrin to 480, and then they really split apart here. At hour 5, the Peax is still on and generating 310 lux, and the Sofrin shut off around the 4.5 hour mark. And at 6 hour mark, the Peax was still going with 127 lux, and obviously the Sofrin was not on. And so it was pretty clear that with those batteries, the Peax greatly outperformed the Sofrin. Now let's have a look at the heat generated, because I think that also tells an interesting story. So the Peax starts off at 104.3 degrees, Sofrin at 112.2, and then they both go up at hour 1 to 111.3 and 119.8. And then they start dropping. And at first I found that confusing, but basically there was a relationship between the amount of battery power left and the amount of lumens that the lamp could generate. So over that first hour, there's enough battery power to create more heat than the lamp can dissipate. But then once the battery gets low enough, it actually can't generate enough lumens where it keeps heating the case up, and so it gets cooler. The takeaway here is that even with a battery that is smaller by 6,000 milliamp hours, the Sofrin is still generating more heat than the Peax. And so this is a very interesting insight, because as you know, energy cannot be destroyed. It can only be transformed into other forms. And so when the energy is leaving the battery, some of it is going to light and some of it is going to heat. And based on these initial tests, it was pretty clear that the Peax was able to put more of that energy into light than it was to heat. What was not clear was that just a function of the discrepancy between the batteries, or was it actually a function of the headlamps themselves? So now we move on to the second phase data. So this is both lamps with the twin 18650 3500 milliamp hour batteries. Couple cycles already run through, fully charged up, ready to go. So at time 0, the Peax generates 2,301 lux. The Sofrin generates 2,291. Pretty similar. And then they start to slide apart on us a little bit. So Peax goes to 1981, Sofrin 1864. Peax 1564, Sofrin 1522, down to 1560, down to 984, Peax to 989, Sofrin to 593. And then again, even with a battery that was 5,000 milliamp hours bigger, the Sofrin still shut off between hour 4 and hour 5. What's interesting is the Peax kept going. So hour 5, 791 lux. Hour 6, 436 lux. And then it was actually 3 minutes before hour 7. So at 6 hours and 57 minutes, the Peax died. So there was about a 33% performance increase between the Peax and the Sofrin using identical batteries. And again, let's go one step further and look at the heat. So similar as last time, Peax starts out at 93 degrees, Sofrin at 107. And it was interesting. As soon as I turned them on, the Sofrin immediately started getting hotter. Now, what I do not know for sure, is that a function of a cheaper case? I would say that is not likely, because these cases are literally identical. Like if I just gave them to you and didn't say anything to them, other than a couple little differences with the power button, they feel the same weight, they look the same, they've got the same markings. I don't think the metal is superior on the Peax. I don't think there's any excess venting or fins on the Peax that the Sofrin doesn't have. So I feel fairly comfortable drawing the conclusion that the Peax has a superior LED. And I'll go one step further. The LED in the Peax is more efficient. It's able to take more power from the battery and convert it to light instead of heat. But otherwise, we see the exact same pattern. Temperatures continue to spike up until the first hour at 109 and 114, and then they slowly go down for the rest of the tests that we can see here illustrated on the graph. And then obviously after hour 4, the Sofrin goes to 0 because it shuts off and it's got no more juice. Now, a final table that I think would be very interesting to compare is the Peax data from experiment 1 with the 3600 milliamp hour battery, and then the Peax data from experiment 2 with the 3500 milliamp hour battery. Because there's always this question about battery quality. Like, are some batteries just inherently better than other batteries? Like, can you buy more expensive, better batteries? And there has been some marketing jargon around the fact that this is a particularly special battery that would be better than just a third-party, no-name battery. Like I said before, this battery cost $4. It doesn't come any more generic than this battery. So let's take a look at this data. So at experiment 1, the OG battery created 1900 lux and the generic battery created 2300 lux. And then when we go to time 2, the OG battery just tanks. It goes right down to 925, and we get this much more gradual decline with the generic battery to 1981. And then at hour 2, it's 890 lux with the OG, 1564 with the generic. Time 3, 880 versus 1560. Time 4, 603, 989. And then, we're really starting to see a pretty drastic difference here. Hour 5, only 310 lux generated with the OG battery and 791 lux with the generic battery. And then finally at hour 6, 127 versus 436, and both batteries go dead between hour 6 and hour 7. So overall, the generic battery had a more linear fall off in that it didn't like dump after that first hour and then gradually tapered out. It kind of naturally transitioned the whole way, and it stayed a little bit brighter, a little bit longer. Now, I'm not saying this generic battery is better than the Peax battery. I'm saying that this Peax battery is in no way a special proprietary battery. It's just a battery. And a $4 generic battery not only performed as good, but it actually performed better. So just to recap, we're seeing about a 33% performance increase with the Peax over the Sofrin when we equalize for batteries. That is, when we use the exact same battery in each headlamp. Now the question is, does a 35% performance increase warrant a 500% price increase? And that's something everybody's going to have to note for themselves. There's one more fundamental difference between these headlamps that I want to note, and that is the functionality of the power buttons. Now they both cycle through their white light and red lights a little bit differently, and they turn on and off a little bit differently. The one fundamental difference that I think could be a deal breaker for the Sofrin for me, the Sofrin does not have a lock. So when you depress the power button on the Peax for, I don't know, like 3 seconds, the light blinks twice and then the light is locked. You can put it in your pack, you can put it in your hip pocket, and you don't have to worry about bumping this button and turning the Peax on and then taking this out of your pack 8 hours later and the battery's dead. There's no way to do that with the Sofrin. There's no locking functionality. The best thing you can do with the Sofrin is if you unscrew this, this is where the charging port is on this end. So this cap is meant to unscrew a little bit. And if you unscrew this 2 or 3 rotations, it will provide a little bit of protection so you don't inadvertently touch this button. However, you're getting kind of close to potentially letting water in here, and it's still not perfect. Like if a device smaller than the diameter of this opening, hits it, it's still going to turn it on. So that's something to keep in note. No locking functionality with the Sofrin. Now, to go back to the Peax, one issue I've had with the Peax is finding cables that actually work to charge this headlamp. For some reason, it is just a normal USB-C port. I will randomly have cables that this headlamp will not accept. Those same cables will charge anything else. They'll charge my phone, they'll charge this headlamp, they'll charge my GoPro, they'll charge any other piece of technology I have, but they do not work with this headlamp. And I've thought maybe it's the opening, like some are just a little bit thicker and they can't get seated all the way in. You know how the rubber housing on a USB-C cable is kind of different shapes and sizes with different cables? But I've tried to isolate for that, and that doesn't seem to be it either. So I don't really have a rational explanation, but it does always make me a little bit nervous because I'm like, am I going to get into the backcountry and the USB-C cable I brought? Obviously, I tested beforehand, but I still haven't ruled out that it's not kind of an intermittent issue. Like it just sometimes doesn't like some cables. So that's a bit of a red flag for me. I've never had that issue with the Sofrin. Every USB-C cable I have works with the Sofrin. One other slight difference I will note, the temperature of the Peax light is slightly cooler than that of the Sofrin. I'll throw up an image here, and I don't mean that temperature in regards to, felt temperature, but like the actual temperature of the color of the light. The Peax is a slightly more white light, and the Sofrin is a little bit warmer hue with a little bit more yellow tinge to it. All right, folks, there you go. I want to thank everybody for kind of calling out the failings in the first video. I always do the best job I can. Every now and then something slips through the cracks. That was a pretty big one, I'll admit. So again, I appreciate being called out, and anytime I miss something and it's an opportunity for us to get more data and have a clearer picture of what's going on. And in one way, I'm kind of glad it happened because it also highlighted the usefulness of generic batteries. Like, listen, man, $4 a piece. Like for you guys on a budget to go spend $18 on a Sofrin and then another $8. I think I actually paid for rush shipping, which is why it's a bit more expensive. But like you could essentially have a Sofrin with 3 batteries for $30. I mean, that's a pretty strong use case, the lock button not aside. Anyways, I will let everybody draw their own conclusions as to whether you think a 33% performance increase is worth a 500% markup. But either way, I'm glad we did this second round of testing. It's always nice to get such clear results so we can make decisions moving forward. If you guys could engage with the content, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. I was looking at my stats the other day and only 30% of the people who watch my videos are subscribers. So that's great news that I'm reaching more people, but it's bad news because the higher your subscriber ratio on your watch list, the more YouTube kind of pumps your stuff up in the algorithm. So if you guys could take a moment and subscribe, I would greatly appreciate it. And as always, thank you for tuning in.